Howdy guys, welcome to another episode of my Encounter Workshop series. Today I have 12 new encounters that you can utilize in a desert environment for levels 1 through 3. These encounters come in 2 different difficulty levels, regular and elite, and they already come pre-balanced using my balancing methodology, which you can check out here if you're interested in that. And feel free to check out the timestamps in the description down below to easily navigate to whatever encounters you're looking for. But let's not waste any more time and go ahead and jump into our first regular encounter for level 1. For our first regular encounter, we're going to be using 2 swarms of insects, specifically the beetle variant. Now, I know this is a fairly basic and traditional encounter, but I feel like I'd be doing you a great disservice if I didn't include an encounter like this that you can easily reflavor either as a scarab swarm or a locust plague. Now, obviously, whichever one of these you decide to use is very much dependent on where your party is currently located when they run into this swarm. If they're inside some type of tombs or ruins, then using the scarabs makes a lot more sense. But if they're closer to a town or some type of desert crops, then the locust flavoring makes more sense. I would recommend using scarabs if you want to set a more mysterious tone or hint at the fact that the creatures they're going to be running into are more along the lines of mummies or other type of undead creatures. While on the other hand, using locusts will set a more doom and gloom tone for a campaign, as if there's some type of plague being brought upon the land, spreading out, taking everything it can with it. This type of tone setting encounter is a great way to kick off any campaign that you want to start in the desert and sets you up really nicely for an early big villain that your party can encounter. For our next regular encounter, we're going to be using 4 blood toll harpies. I think the best way to use these harpies is to not have them attack your party directly, but instead have them attack some type of caravan that your party comes across, thus giving your party the opportunity to either save them or to let them perish so your party can swoop in later and take all the loot. And should your party decide to go with the latter option, you can easily have the harpies come back later that night when they're taking the long rest and attack them, giving them a little bit of that divine punishment. But now let's talk about tactics. These harpies aren't very intelligent or have any type of crazy stats or abilities that make them super powerful in this encounter. The real threat being the minute one of them manages to hurt one of your players, because at that point they're all going to gang up on that one player and try to take them out one at a time, and are going to be fairly effective at doing this with their blood frenzy ability. This will give them advantage on every single attack so long as that player is missing at least 1 HP. So because of that, I think it's best to have the party encounter some type of skirmish or some type of trap that hurts them for at least 1 HP. That way, when the harpies do show up, they are already set up with their blood frenzy ready. For our first elite encounter, we're going to be using 1 burbling. And in this encounter, I would very much recommend that you send the party off on 1 to 2 following types of quests, either to explore some type of tomb or excavation site, or find some missing archaeologists. That way, as they're coming close to the end of this quest and they come across the burbling, they encounter hearing only the tail end of its conversation, either with some type of strange creature or one of the bodies of the lost researchers themselves, desecrating their bones, inscribing something onto them. Seeing this should be enough to prompt your party to initiate combat with the burbling. And depending on how you want this quest to fully play out, this could be only the first time your party comes across the burbling. Well, more specifically, the spectral duplicate of the burbling, with them coming across the true body of the burbling at level 2. If you choose to use the spectral duplicate in this encounter, the only real difference is going to be the fact that all the damage the burbling does is going to be psychic damage, meaning your barbarian is going to be just as vulnerable as everyone else in this encounter. The burbling is incredibly intelligent, meaning it's going to prioritize attacking the weaker backline players first, flying over the melee damage dealers and using whatever cover it can to break line of sight with the casters. Now, aside from that, there isn't anything really special that the burbling will do during combat, aside from maybe using plane shift to get itself out of that encounter if you're using its true body and not its spectral duplicate instead. For this next elite encounter, we're going to be using 2 indentured spirits. Now, I'm sure you know where I'm probably going with this encounter. We're going to be reenacting a classic desert night trope. But if you don't know what this trope is, here's the quick and dirty for it. These indentured spirits will be playing the role of lost forgotten souls wandering the harsh desert night plains, looking for any living creature so it can attack it and possess its body. But after a quick glance at their stat block, you might be thinking, these spirits will not be a good enough challenge for your party because they have a measly AC of 11 and only 13 hit points total. But that's not taken into consideration the fact that these spirits have crazy damage resistances and immunities, meaning they should last more than enough time, giving your party an ample challenge. But just in case, here's a quick tactic that I would recommend you to use for this encounter. Have the spirits come out of either rocks or the ground itself using its incorporeal movement ability. That way, it can surprise your party and get one quick round on them, making sure they don't die out too quickly. For our first regular encounter at level 2, we're going to be using 2 death dogs. This is one of my favorite encounters out of all the ones you can use in a desert environment, purely for the fact that it's using one of my favorite types of monsters in all of D&D, dog and wolf variant monsters. However, sadly these death dogs are missing what I think is the most crucial and most powerful ability given to every single dog and wolf variant monster: pack tactics. Wizards, what are you doing? Where's my pack tactics? They're literally called dogs. But whatever. These death dogs have another ability that makes them just as crazy deadly and just as powerful. But all this happens after the combat is already done and over with. Now, before I get into that, let's talk about how we're going to set up this encounter. I would recommend having a pair of these death dogs attacking some civilians either on the outskirts of town, trying to escape into the town at night, or having a pair of these attack some civilians in an alleyway. Both of these options give your party more than enough opportunity to try to save them. And because they're missing pack tactics in their stat block, during combat, the death dogs aren't doing anything special, just biting the nearest player twice every single turn. But this is where the fun truly begins, because every single successful bite attack has a chance to infect the players with a disease that will quickly drain their maximum HP every single day. Essentially, magical rabies turned all the way up to 11. And because we're having this encounter at level 2, this disease will outright kill most classes after just 2 days, with some players not even surviving 1 day if they rolled poorly on their hit die. It's this sense of panic and terror that you can instill in your players that truly makes for memorable sessions for both you as a DM and your players as they try to struggle against time to overcome and figure out the solution to this disease. For our next rogue encounter, we're going to be using 4 geonids. So if you've been watching my encounter workshop series for a while now, you might have noticed I have a tendency or a habit when it comes to some of my encounter ideas for my players. And if you haven't, well, here's a quick spoiler. I kinda, sorta, maybe take a lot of pleasure in punching my players and constantly keeping them on their toes. And with these geonids, we're gonna be doing just that. Because as your party begins to wind down for the night, either inside of a desert cave or on some type of small rock outcropping, getting ready for a night full of mimes, that's where we're gonna have these little boulders slowly start maneuvering into proper position to ambush them. Now, luckily, in spite of the fact that these geonids do almost no damage with their clubs, they have crazy high AC and a bunch of hit points, meaning they should last long enough to do a decent amount of damage for your party. And just like with the death dogs, the true fun begins after this encounter is done and over with, as your party will start to prod every single boulder and every single rock they see before they take a long rest out in the open ever again. And if they aren't, drop some small details about their campsite every single time they go and camp, that there's small boulders scattered throughout everywhere around them. And if they still continue to ignore that, every time they roll a bad perception or investigation check during watch, drop a hint that maybe they're seeing some of the boulders move, even if they really aren't any geonids. But if after all of that, they still aren't paranoid and they still aren't checking, then definitely throw another set of geonids at them and give them another bashing until they are paranoid. For our first elite encounter at level 2, we have 1 Lamia. Now, before I really get into this encounter, I need to apologize to all my fellow weebs and fantasy world enjoyers, because sadly, Lamia in the world of D&D as written are not sexy snake ladies. In fact, they're more like sphinx ladies. So a centaur with a lion's body. This isn't the first time D&D has bamboozled me and let me down, and it probably won't be the last, but I digress. Them being these lion, centaur, sphinx people actually fits this environment a whole lot better anyways, so we're just gonna roll with it. I think the best part about using a Lamia in this encounter and in your campaign is all the different implications that this has for the rest of your story and world building. As Lamia are fairly civilized creatures choosing to live inside of ancient tombs or other type of ruined cities of past monarchs. Not just that, but they also employ a bunch of jaguars to help facilitate and stabilize their entire society. All of this doesn't even include how dangerous Lamias truly are in combat. For this encounter specifically, I think it'd be a major waste, an absolute disaster, if you just had it devolve into a slugfest where your party and the Lamia are just attacking each other outright from the get-go. I think it'd be much better to have the Lamia use its disguise self and major image spell to get closer to the party and trick them by whatever means necessary. And hopefully through that, the Lamia is able to get close enough to at least one party member to get within range to touch it with its intoxicating touch ability, giving it disadvantage against all wisdom saving throws and ability checks, giving it the perfect opportunity to be more successful in being able to cast Suggestion and or Gias on at least one or more players, increasing its potency by so much. Because with these spells, the Lamia will be able to manipulate the party so much better and so much more effectively to lure them into its trap. But if the combat breaks out before the trap even gets sprung, no problem. The first thing the Lamia has to do is cast the most powerful defensive spell in all of D&D, in my opinion. Mirror Image. It gives the Lamia 3 shadow clones that can effectively take 3 attacks forward, which really makes up for the fact that it has a disgustingly low AC at 13. Aside from that, the Lamia is just going to claw and stab at the players until it manages to take them all out. But it will definitely do this in an efficient way because it does have a 14 intelligence and a 15 wisdom score, so it should be able to target prioritize a lot better and be able to figure out who's a true threat in that party. For our next elite encounter, we're going to be using 4 dust methods. This is a fairly straightforward encounter, with the most engaging part about it being how you set it up. I personally love the idea of having little sand tornadoes move across the desert plains, overcoming the party, blinding them quite literally as the methods use their blinding breath attack. After the blinding breath attack, have your party roll a perception check at disadvantage, trying to beat a DC of 12 if they aren't blinded and a DC of 14 if they are, to see if they can notice that there are some creatures inside of these little sand devils. If your party doesn't notice that there were creatures inside these sand devils, have the methods attack your party at advantage with their claw attacks. Continue this for about 2 rounds before the methods try to use their sleep spell. Because assuming the methods manage to get a couple decent hits in the previous 2 rounds, they should have a fair chance to actually pacify the party completely with the 5d8 hit points that the sleep spell can overcome. For our first regular encounter at level 3, we're going to be using 4 Jackal Wares. At the rate I'm going to end up using every single were creature in all of D&D minus werewolves in my Encounter Workshop series. And just like every other were creature, the most fun part about using them is the deception aspect and the setup for this encounter itself. Jaguars also have absolutely amazing defenses just like every other were creature, being immune to any type of non-magical or non-silvered weapon attacks, which more than makes up for the fact that they have a pitiful amount of HP and a very low AC. Another cherry on top of that is the fact that they have Pack Tactics. Again, truly one of the most OP abilities in all of D&D, because it turns their pitiful attacks into some crazy monstrous attacks, as they're going to be creating a lot more often if you're utilizing it properly. Now, in terms of the setup for this encounter itself, I think the most logical decision is to have it take place inside some type of desert town or village. That way, the Jackal Wares can appear in any of the 3 forms: their beggar human form, their regular jackal form, or even their hybrid form. Where you can run Jackal Wares as independent monsters, I think it makes the most sense to actually run them as minion type creatures, because this allows them to truly use their sleep gaze ability to kidnap players or other NPCs for their master. In combat itself, the Jackal Wares will be attacking in a fairly straightforward manner, always attacking in 2s, that way they can make sure to properly utilize their pack tactics. But once things start looking bad for them, that's when they're going to shapeshift into their jackal form or their hybrid form and trying to get out of dodge as quickly as they can. They will only use their sleep gaze ability in combat as a last ditch effort to try to escape if they think it will actually do something for them. Otherwise, they're not going to do that. They're going to end up using it before combat as they try to kidnap a player, or when they're kidnapping one of the NPCs the player is trying to protect or is near. For this next encounter, we're going to be utilizing 1 Suran Defiler. And in this encounter specifically, we're going to be turning what should be a safe haven, the Oasis, into a hostile environment, defiling it and infesting it with one of these defilers. Now, giving the stat block a quick glance, you would be absolutely stupid to not use this as an ambush encounter. I do believe a good ambush encounter has the following 2 components in them. The first being some type of hint or an opportunity to let the party know that something is wrong here, while the second is the actual opener for the ambush itself and the objective and goal of it. In this specific encounter, our hint is going to be one of the following two things. The first could be either certain areas of the oasis have a bunch of dead vegetation from the defiler using its defile ability previously, or the fact that the other creatures in the oasis completely avoid certain areas of the water, giving hints that there might be something lurking there. But if your party doesn't pick up on either of these two things, that's fine. Let the ambush happen as normal. But if your party does try to investigate either of these two hints, then give them a chance to notice the defiler sneaking up on them while invisible to try to get proper positioning for its opener. As for the opener, our objective normally is to do as much damage as possible to as many players as possible, but in this encounter specifically, I don't think that's the right choice. The main reason being, in spite of the fact that the defiler can do crazy amounts of damage in its opener, doing 2 claw attacks and the AoE defile, I think using defile later on in the encounter is actually a better decision. Mostly because the defile recharges on a 6, meaning you only have a 16% chance of having it come back every single round. Where 4d10 necrotic damage on all 4 players can be an absolute devastating move, I don't think it's as impactful as letting our defiler heal at round 2 or 3 with the defile ability then, making the encounter last that much longer, which in my experience has proven to be way deadlier than doing a quick burst of damage in the very first round, unless it can take out at least one player. So in conclusion, I don't think you should open up with defile and just do the 2 claw attacks. Save defile for around 2 or 3 after it's taken 1 or 2 hits. That way it can recuperate it all and keep clawing away at your party. For our first elite encounter at level 3, we're going to be using one glowing Nether. When it comes to using the Nether at this level, I think it makes the most sense to use it kind of as a final boss either in a tomb or some type of pyramid dungeon that you have your players exploring. That way we can properly set up the arena with the remains of other adventures that it's petrified to help set the mood and tone for what the party can expect in this encounter. In terms of tactics, I would suggest having the Nether attack twice with its longbow at a distance, hiding behind or amongst all the glass statues it's created, trying to quickly close distance with the party. That way it can use its petrifying gaze ability and its snake hair attacks. And because your party has to constantly avert their gaze or potentially become petrified, this should allow them to easily be able to maneuver around the battlefield, as all attacks against them will be done at disadvantage. This should allow it to get into proper positioning to either get 2 players with its petrifying gaze or just do its high burst poison damage fairly regularly. In terms of the defenses for the Nether, there's nothing really there to write home about. Necrotic immunity is kind of pointless at this level, as there isn't a lot of necrotic damage your players can do at 3, and the poison immunity will have varying mileage, as depending on your player's playstyle and party composition, they might not even use poison damage to begin with. For our last elite encounter, we're going to be using 2 Corinthi undead soldiers. Maybe it's the edgelord in me, or the fact that I just absolutely love anything dark fantasy, but I think the idea of using these 2 Corinthi undead soldiers in any campaign would be so much fun, and it could fit in damn near any story setting too, because they literally check off every checkbox in my book for what makes an amazing fun monster. They have crazy good defenses with a base AC of 17 and damage resistance to both cold and poison damage. They have a gimmick ability in their undead fortitude, making them incredibly threatening and deadly, as they just keep getting back up over and over again, seemingly never dying. They have a parry action, making damn sure that no one's ever going to hit them with a melee attack. And most importantly, they have the most overpowered ability in all of D&D, Pack Tactics. Oh my god, it's so good on any creature you throw this on. Plus, they're undead, so that's not just cool, but there's so many cool implications that you can have in your overall story and campaign with them. However, it is a little bit more balanced with the fact that their overall damage output every single round isn't the best, but it's the relentlessness of them that really makes them shine. In terms of battle strategy, we'll obviously be using pack tactics as much as we can in this encounter, meaning these 2 soldiers will always be fighting shoulder to shoulder against the same player. As for where you can have this encounter take place, you can literally do this anywhere you want in the entire desert. In the town, out in the plains, in a cave, in a pyramid. There is no bad place to have these undead soldiers pop up and attack the party. I'm personally privy to the idea of having them crawl out of the sand, grabbing onto the party's ankles and attacking them, but that's just me. I like to ambush them a lot. My personal favorite idea for using these undead soldiers is to use them as forward scouts for a much bigger and grander undead army that is slowly marching their way across the desert plains themselves. This could be either under the direction of a necromancer, lich, mummy lord, or even some cursed burial site that is just going rampant and raising undead willy-nilly. Or you can completely take this idea and turn it all the way up to the max by making it an apocalyptic scene where this is the forward scouts of the undead army, of the apocalypse, of the four horsemen themselves as they begin to walk across the plains trying to cleanse the world of all life. These guys are just such a perfect duo to help set up any type of story you're trying to craft in your world. There's so many plot hooks and so many plot devices that they can help with, and not just that, they also serve as great base stat blocks for any undead monster you want to use at higher levels. So if you found this video helpful and enjoyable, give this video a like and comment down below what is your favorite type of monster to use in a desert environment. And if you'd like to see more encounters like these for levels 4 and 5, make sure you get subscribed so you don't miss when I release that video. But yeah, see you guys next time.